From talking to other analysts, pro players, looking around the community at the reaction to the teams that qualify for the major, and then the field, the Swiss system, who the favourites are, etc., it feels as if a lot of people have written off G2. Like they're just not going to make it through, or it'd be incredibly, miraculous if they did. A lot of people, it has to be said, actually didn't have them even making it through the qualifier. A lot of people thought that they just wouldn't make it, that they, especially in light of the whole French super team that was always behind the scenes, and people knew that like these teams don't necessarily believe in their own future. I actually think that this is a team that can get to the playoffs. In fact, as of right now, I pick them to be a team. They're right down the bottom of my list, but I'm picking them as one of the teams that are one of my borderline cases where I think they're going to make the playoffs. Sure, it's touch and go, but the reasoning, when I look at the whole field, makes sense when I consider them over some of the other teams who have upset potential. So if we look at their win conditions, first and foremost, the story is the same. For them to have a chance, Shox and Scream have to be pretty sick. Now, here's the thing. That's actually pretty reliable. You go back and look at G2 throughout the year, Shox and Scream do deliver. Scream especially, because his game's a bit more invisible, because he doesn't win the great clutches, doesn't entry the same way Shox does. Doesn't have the same impact in terms of what you see in terms of winning rounds outright, but his numbers are really good, and he really does deliver fairly consistently, actually. So you take Shox, he's already been performing for most of the year. Now, yes, their map pool is something that they're going to depend on massively, more so than some of the other teams. There are some teams with deep map pools in this tournament. So the problem with that, though, is whenever you say someone's got a shallow map pool, it all doesn't matter how shallow it is. It depends on which the maps are. Because if they're maps that people will play you on, now you can still get your wins. So in the Swiss system, we know that there's going to be 5 maps banned out. There's going to be 2, and it's going to be randomized onto one of them. So here's the question. If you want to say G2 won't make it to the playoffs, you have to tell me who's going to ban both of the maps. If they have the option to ban the 3 or the 2, who's actually going to ban both maps against G2? I mean, I looked through the field. Okay, here are the people I think might ban both. I think VP, it's pretty likely they would ban both. They don't like Dust 2 historically, and they don't really play a load of cash. It's right near the bottom of their map pool, and they have such a deep map pool elsewhere, such a wide map pool. Hellraisers just don't really play these maps, so I think they're pretty likely they would ban it. Godsend, I think probably a pretty good chance they would ban them, even though in theory you'd think they should be able to play a little bit of cash, but their map pool is so shallow and going towards the other end of the equation that they probably would ban both. SK, obviously we can't really know because with the stand-in a lot could have changed, but you would think that they would ban both with possibly an option to let Dust 2 through since they've been playing that. It's been one of the few maps that you can use a stand-in on, one of the few maps that they're actually not that bad on with the old lineup, but I think it's just too dangerous. I think they would actually just outright ban both, especially because they know that G2 is going to ban Mirage for them, and obviously Mirage really went off a cliff at the end with that SK lineup. So okay, there's like, what have we got, 4 teams at the moment. I think Gambit probably would, because Gambit probably aren't going to want to play cash against them. They played a little bit when they Dream of Quint. They don't really look like they're comfortable on that map. Then you get to the teams that they might ban one. So, okay, North will ban cash if they get the option. They won't play that. But they'll play Dust 2. They don't mind that being in the equation. If they ban it, it's just purely to target G2. But actually, they'll probably leave it out there. Seem like they might not mind playing it. Envious, it's unlikely would ban either, actually. Those are 2 of 3, Envious's 3 best maps. They want those in the equation. Would FaZe ban either of them? FaZe might ban cash. I don't think they're going to ban Dust 2, though. Flipside. Okay, maybe Flipside would ban both. That might be a possibility, actually. Na'Vi. I think Na'Vi's going to leave Dust 2 in. Na'Vi might ban cash, so there's one. Mousesports aren't going to ban either. Team Liquid quite likely aren't going to ban either. Fnatic seems likely aren't going to ban either. Optic won't ban cash. They want to play the cash, and they don't mind that being in the randomizer. They beat G2 out in the past already. Astralis might ban cash, but probably won't, because actually it looks like they have been building confidence on that map and certainly don't mind playing it, especially against the level of a G2. So that might just be a target ban, but they've got such a deep map pool, a wide map pool elsewhere. Why would they ban it? So I actually think at least half the field aren't going to ban both, even if they have the option for the 3 bans. So I think you're going to get Dust 2 or cash into the randomizer. So first of all, the randomizer itself can give G2 a good chance and maybe even outright get them a win or 2, assuming they can draw it in 1 or 2 of their games. I mean, remember, you can play up to 5 games before you fully go out if you go 2-2 and then there's a third one. Now, once you go past Dust 2 and Cash, Cobble and Train are shaky for this team but it's going to be very much dependent on the opponent if they can make it shaky enough that the skill of Shocks and Scream can't win the map for you. So let's look at the teams that it would be bad to get Train or Cobble against, in as much as they're going to let it through, but it's actually winnable. So, okay, Godsent. Well, we know Godsent can flip this major. Godsent don't really have a whole lot of a T side. Now, G2 isn't that great on Cobble. They're pretty shaky, but that'll just become a skill matchup, and that's winnable right there. Team Liquid, we know they're going to let Cobble through. Team Liquid hasn't looked that great in quite a while. Like, they would like to play some Cobble. That's going to, again, be a skill matchup, and Team Liquid doesn't look like they're going to do well at this major. Envious, we know, would let it through, and Envious at the moment, for some weird reason, has some sort of a psychological block against G2, probably because G2's outperformed them, and they kind of know that the whole French Shuffle's going to happen. Flipside probably will let it in, and that famously is a map where Flipside has the players to be good, and they have the routine, but sometimes the firepower just doesn't show up for Flipside. Fnatic, probably going to let it through as well. But Fnatic's looked so rocky in the last few months. They haven't practiced almost anything for this tournament by the numbers we've seen. That's certainly a winnable matchup right there. Gambit might let it through. I feel like with the maps they have to ban, that's probably something that'll be at the bottom that might get randomized if they don't go ahead and ban out. But I don't know that you can say Gambit would outright win this map. Gambit's all right, but we still don't really know that much about them. They're very unknown quality. Now, Hellraisers would let it through, but actually I think Hellraisers is a tricky one if G2 gets them and they play either of those maps, Cobble or Train. You don't want to play either, especially not Train, but I think Cobble also, they would surprise it. That's actually a trickier matchup. SK isn't as impossible as they would have been in the past on these two maps, because they've got the stand-in. Their matchup's going to be decent still. I think they'll still have the routine. I'd still pick them to beat G2 here, but that's not as obvious as it seems. So again, even when we get to the randomized map that'll come through, I've just eliminated like half the field right there. So now we go down the map pool again. So Overpass initially was that pocket pick. They'd won it against SK Luminosity a couple of times. But we have seen since then, it's not as strong as we thought, actually. It wasn't that sick a pocket pick. A lot of that was just kind of like teams didn't know how to play them on it, and they were insanely hot as a team at the time. But here's the good thing. Being bad on Overpass isn't that bad at the moment, because there's not that many sick teams on Overpass. Okay, Astralis and Optic, they're off limits. You don't want to play them on Overpass. They'll fuck you up. North also getting towards that level. But okay, VP and FaZe, yeah, they'll play you on that map, and that's not impossible, actually. That's somewhat doable. The VP one can be quite questionable. The FaZe one, they can be good on it. The T-side certainly can be good on it, but their problem is their players, you never know which ones are going to show up. So that's suddenly in the equation. SK had lost faith in Overpass anyway. If that comes through, SK is very vulnerable on that map, and especially now that they're going to have this new player coming into the equation, because actually that was one of FNX's better maps if you went and looked. Everyone else is fair game on Overpass if it comes through. Now, another detail people don't often notice about G2 is like they don't like Nuke, but they let it through and they've played it, and because they sometimes ban Overpass, they certainly are more willing to play Nuke, it seems, especially depending on the opponent. So the key thing is, there's so few teams that are actually legit good on Nuke, and there is no NIP. So at the moment, the only teams they really have to fear on Nuke, Astralis could probably beat them on it. It's just VP and North. They're the really scary teams on Nuke that they don't want to play. But that's only two teams out of the whole field. Everyone else, it's reasonable to play them on. Some of them might even give G2 the advantage in the pick ban and in the randomizer of it if Nuke comes out, because actually they're not terrible at it. They're not bad. They have a pretty decent CT side, and there's no NIP. Then you've got to ask this. What happened at the major qualifier? Well, actually, if you remember, I did that video, I'll link it up here, where I went through all the pick bans and which ones got fucked by the randomizer. G2 only got fucked once, which is against Dignitas, now North, and because they would have banned Nuke. Against everyone else, it went fine, because that's actually the meta of which maps people are playing at the moment. So, there is upset potential in the rest of the tournament. Now, why that's great in the Swiss system is because the Swiss system already starts with such funky seeds because they come from the last tournament. And then, because you have upset potential in the middle of the pack, there are actually going to be scenarios in which G2 could be at a 1-1 or a 1-2 stage and get one of the easier matchups. And that's going to get you a second or another win, get you one win closer. And you haven't even had to have a really great matchup at this point in time. So there aren't going to be this scenario where all the favourites win all their matches for the first two. There's going to be deceptive upsets, and that's actually going to give you a chance just from the nature of how Swiss system works. I also think that you have to look and say no NIP in the field is a boon to G2. That was a psychological mismatch they had. Skill-wise, they always should have had great games with NIP, but for some reason NIP had held it over them psychologically. Then you go and look at some of the other matchups. They have a good matchup against Envious. Envious has a psychological disadvantage against them, and the whole French shuffle thing's in the background. SK has a stand-in, so they actually could flop. Their whole strengths are very uncertain, so you don't know what game that will turn up in. The only real teams they have to be scared about is VP, North, and Astralis, because those teams could all use the map pool to bully G2. And their seeds, except in the case of Dignitas North. But Astralis, for a start off, is less likely to anyway. They're probably going to be more willing to play some of these maps. So it's only really VP and North that you have to really worry about that much. And the thing with North is they're not godlike on a lot of their maps. So even if they bully you, unless it comes to a nuke in the randomizer, you can at least play the other maps. If it gets to the playoffs, you have to look at which of the other teams likely to make the playoffs, and then how would G2 match up. So let's say North makes it there. I think they would have a map disadvantage against North, because remember, you're only going to ban one, then you're going to pick one, then the randomizer is going to pick from the other three. But North themselves, if they ban Cash, which is the obvious one to ban, are going to have to be scared about the train coming out the randomizer anyway. And if you play Dust 2, because they're going to let you have Dust 2, because North's going to ban Cash, well, you have a solid chance to win Dust 2, so you're going to get your map, potentially, and then you could get Train as a randomizer. So actually, North could end up being a good matchup. This is an interesting one to watch out for if it happens. Virtus Pro is a very tough draw, I will say that. Even so, you can at least pick Cash, so you have a shot on that, and then if you get really lucky, maybe the decider is Overpass. If the decider's Overpass, it's not impossible. I'd still pick VP to win that, but you've got let's say a 30% chance. That's not ridiculous. And like I say, you can get your Cash initially. Astralis is going to be tough all around. It's very hard to see any ways that you're going to win that. They can even beat you on your own maps if they come through. FaZe is an interesting one because FaZe can get their own map against you, and they're going to have chances in the third map, but it's actually good for G2 that G2 automatically permabans Mirage because that's a map that FaZe won anyway. So I think that evens it out a bit. And you look at the composition of the two teams, it's going to be, can Shux and Scream go ham? And then will you get that Rain AZ combo that matches them? If not, then that's going to be a real back and forth slugfest of the series. And that could even be a 2-0 either way. 2-0 FaZe, 2-0 G2. If they get SK in the first round of the playoffs, obviously not that likely, but let's say it can happen. Then I actually think they can get either of their maps. They can get Dust 2 or Cash because they're going to get one of them. I think both of them are winnable. SK actually, if you remember, even picked Cash when they were against Astralis in the semi-final at ECS Season 2. So it looked like either that was a pocket pick or they were hiding strats, or they just thought, fuck it, we can't play the old maps because we're not as good anymore. So actually, it's going to be, I think that's actually quite a risky matchup for SK just because of how good G2 can sometimes be on a Cash or a Dust 2. Then you got to add in Optic. Okay, here's the interesting thing. So when Optic plays, Optic will play Cobblestone, obviously. Now, if I'm the guys from G2, I might just ban Cobblestone, because normally I ban Mirage, but we know Optic don't want to play Mirage anyway, so you could float that. I don't think they'll do that, because by the way, I don't think Optic's going to pick Mirage against you in the fucking quarterfinals of the major. In fact, I would bet money on that. But unfortunately, look at G2, they're not a team who floats in that sense. So Optic's going to pick Cobble, and likelihood they're going to beat you on Cobble. They're much better than you on that. Now, you can play Cash against them, assuming they ban out Dust 2. Obviously, they've beat you on that, so actually I think Optic's one of the tougher matchups for G2. If they get Optic, I don't see them winning that one. Navi's an interesting one, because Navi has the skill, certainly, to actually blow out Shocks and Scream and make it not even matter. But Navi has a very weak map pool, and I don't think this map draw is going to be very good for them, because the ban of Mirage by G2 takes away a Navi's strength. Navi's not good on Cash, so that's going to be problematic for them if they have to play that. Their Dust 2 is alright, but it relies heavily on their skill. Nuke is interesting if it came out as a third map, because we know that both teams have started to play Nuke, and Na'Vi wasn't that terrible, actually. They could get the odd win on it. So I think Na'Vi's an interesting matchup. I think that one actually would be fun, and I think G2 can win that one, especially with some of the Na'Vi individual skill failures. Now, there is a condition here, which is that, yes, G2 has had a bad history at the majors. Admittedly, only one of them with this exact lineup. Smith's form has been fairly shit, and he has moved off the AWP. That's problematic in itself, although actually Smith played pretty well at the last major, if you saw. Shocks, this is a key detail, hasn't really gone beast mode at the majors in quite a while, whether it's because of the pressure or in fact he has to solo carry some of the time. Don't know what it is. That'll be interesting to see whether that plays out. I actually don't think the French shuffle will impact G2 though. I think that they've already overcome being a team of rejects that essentially only Shox was a good player who could have been on the Envious and chose not to be by having the coup d'etat. So I actually don't think the French Shuffle will affect G2 in that sense. I think instead they'll see it as a chance to prove something, to go out on a high with this group of friends, etc. I think actually it's a good audition chance to, if you're not in the French Shuffle, maybe I can make a case for myself by doing well at this tournament. I think an obvious person in that sense is Scream. I mean, he's not going to get into the French Shuffle, unfortunately, it's very likely, but he has nothing to lose. And we know he's a good player and he plays quite individualistically anyway. I think it's envious, actually, that personally, that I think are going to suffer from the whole French Shuffle thing and eroding their confidence. They already played with less confidence with this unit than G2 play with their unit. So I actually have G2. When I look at the whole field, I look at the conditions, I look at the way the team's set up, I look at the maps, how they're very likely going to play out. I think G2 is the sleeper. Not going to make it deep. I think the best case scenario is that they get out of the groups, which I think is going to happen, and not groups, the Swiss system. And I think if they I have about half the field that they could get in a best of three, and either they'll win a map and at least have the third map, or a couple of them I actually think they'll win. So I think they can make the quarterfinals, and if they get the right opponent and the right randomized map, I think they can make the semi. So I'm having them as my sleeper pick to go much further than actually other people think they do, and I think G2 will surprise.